Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as one of the former co-chairs and leaders of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, the largest bipartisan bicameral caucus in this Congress, I reluctantly rise in strong opposition to this Interior Appropriation Bill. Mr. Chairman, this bill falls short on so many different levels, especially our responsibility to future generations to be good stewards of the public land, the vital natural resources, the wildlife that we have within our borders. But don't take my word for it, Mr. Chairman. We've had a tradition in this place for many years of having strong bipartisan support for reasonable, sensible land and water conservation programs. That's why earlier this month, a coalition of over 640 outdoor recreation entities sent a letter to each of our offices, including the congressional leadership, expressing their deep concern and dismay over the funding cuts proposed in this appropriation bill. This letter was signed by entities such as the Boone and Crockett Club, the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the National Wild Turkey Foundation, Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, the Trout Unlimited, and it was also signed by the President of the Wilderness Society, Bill Meadows, and the board member of the Civil War Trust, John Now. I'd like to read that letter at this time. It reads, and I quote, "We are a broad coalition of organizations representing millions of members with very diverse political backgrounds and areas of interest, united behind a shared belief that natural resource conservation, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation and investments in them are vital to the future of our great nation. Like you, we are concerned about our nation's fiscal health. The nation faces unsustainable future fiscal deficits, which must be addressed. As part of the overall solution to our deficit challenges, we know that conservation, recreation, and historic preservation programs will not and should not be exempted from scrutiny. We are willing to engage in a process to find further savings in spending and review the economic and budgetary benefits of critical conservation, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation programs. The federal budget cannot and should not be balanced disproportionately on the backs of conservation, outdoor recreation, and preservation. Doing so will impose on future generations whose well-being depends on the conservation and preservation of our common natural and historic resources. As a diverse community of taxpayers and voters, we care about natural resource conservation, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation. We stand ready to work with you on a serious effort to address our nation's economic and fiscal challenges as they relate to investments in and tough choices about the programs we care about. We urge this Congress to address the federal deficit while still investing in critical conservation, recreation, and historic preservation programs in 2012, end quote. Mr. Chairman, I would at this time ask unanimous consent to have the record, have this letter inserted in the record during general leave at the appropriate time.
Well, that will be covered by the general.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, these groups, and as many of us realize too, this is more than just being good stewards of the land and doing right by future generations. Investment in these vital programs are crucial for economic development and job creation in this country. The Outdoor Industry Foundation has issued a survey from year to year showing the economic impact of many of these conservation programs on outdoor recreation activities. They found that outdoor recreation contributes $730 billion annually to the U.S. economy, supports 6.5 million private sector jobs, 1 out of every 20 jobs, and stimulates 8% of consumer spending. In Wisconsin alone, my home state, hunting and fishing alone supports 57,000 jobs, $400 million in state revenue. Sportsmen spend $3.1 billion annually, which helps stimulate the Wisconsin economy and other states. Mr. Chairman, the irony in all this is that these organizations and these programs have been giving at the idol of deficit reduction for some time. In fact, over the last 30 years, Americans' investment in parks, wildlife, clean water, clean air has fallen from 1.7% of overall federal budget to less than 0.6%. So throughout the years, there's been a continual reduction in funding for these programs. The irony is that public dollar used, it's leveraged to draw in more private sector dollars. This too will be in great jeopardy with the dismantling of these programs. These aren't programs that you can just turn in off with a spigot. You need a continuity of care to keep them going. And with funding reductions of this magnitude, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to maintain that continuity of care, whether it's to clean water, clean air, to wildlife preservation and enhancement. All of these programs are under a direct assault with this Interior Appropriation Bill. With the Land and Water Conservation Fund, an 80% proposed cut. And the irony with this program is it's funded by oil royalties. It's been a grand bargain that's been used in the past to allow development of oil on public lands. I encourage my colleagues to vote no on this appropriation bill. We can do better than this. We have to do better. I yield back.